Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of Fallen Baby Birds. This will be Part 4, Chapter 4, entitled Moments in Time. There were many incidents during the first year at the Yamazawa household. Maybe not really called incidents, but something like that. Yeah, moments. These are just some of them. Keigo woke up after the first month in bed alone. This in itself was something somewhat alarming, considering Izuku was glued to his side every night, but he doesn't panic quite yet. The hatchling could have just had to use the bathroom. The hawk throws the blanket off himself and steps onto the carpet, remaining quiet as he opens the door to the hallway and peeks out. He squints at the light on in the living room, slowly stepping out and padding over to the open space. He blinks at the scene in front of him, utterly confused. Though later, if you asked him, he'd say it was perfectly normal. Shouta stands in front of the hatchling who sits on the couch, staring right up at Aizawa who stares right back with the same amount of undetermined emotion. Keigo watches as the tired man lifts his hand up and places it onto the baby's head, ever so gently ruffling the soft green curls. Izuku merely leans a little into the affection, still not breaking eye contact. Then, Izuku spots Keigo in the corner of his eye and breaks the moment between him and Shouta, scooting off the couch and running up to the hawk. Keigo picks Izuku up immediately, glancing back over to Aizawa as soon as he does and seeing the utterly defeated posture he now carries. Oh, maybe he should have waited behind the corner a little longer. Oops. He doesn't blame Shouta for wanting to spend time with Izuku, even in his own odd way. Okay, maybe it wasn't so odd, the man just testing the waters and seeing what's best for Izuku and what's not. Keigo wonders if there's a silent way of communicating between them that he doesn't know about, one that formed out of just pure introvertism. Yeah, most likely. A week later, he wakes up to find himself in the exact same situation, except this time Izuku is standing next to the couch, gently patting Aizawa's head as the man lay sleeping on the couch. Keigo pretends like he wasn't staring for a good 10 minutes as he walked in, Izuku allowing the hawk to pick him up and place him on his hip like a baby. The older boy stares at Aizawa for a moment, gaze flickering to and from Izuku, and next, he lets out a long breath of air before placing his own hand on top of the tired man's head, not missing how Izuku's expression lights up. I guess even adults need head pats every now and then, too. As soon as Aizawa's eyes flicker open, however, Keigo was gone with Izuku into their room. They miss the small smile that the man sends toward their door, as if he just achieved something huge. In the next month, Keigo was swinging at the swings in the park. None of the friends that he had made had shown up, but that was okay. Sometimes just swinging alone was refreshing. He's lost in thought as he looks around the park, eyes landing on Izuku who's still napping and clutching a stuffed bunny in his stroller. His face looked extremely peaceful, and every so often his face would scrunch up as if he was thinking hard in his dream. Keigo averts his gaze momentarily, letting out a sigh as he stares at his shoe swinging back and forth gently. He wonders if Izuku would let him push him on the swing next time. There's a spike of determination that goes through him, and he tightens his grip around the swing's chains. He'll get Izuku to open up to more daring things like the swing. Just wait and see. He looks back up after hopping off the swing, fully intending to fulfill this new urge to just hold Izuku, and he meets an odd sight. The hatchling is crawling out of the stroller, tippy toes reaching for the ground as he tries not to fall. Keigo debates on helping or not, and instead decides to just watch as the hatchling wasn't in any immediate danger. When Izuku finally lands safely onto the ground, he takes only a few small steps in order to reach Aizawa, ignoring Yamada, who's been recording the hatchling with his phone the entire time, and grabbing Shota's knees in order to pull himself up and into his lap. The tired man merely blinks down at Izuku, not moving until the hatchling stands on wobbly legs on top of Aizawa's thighs and basically collapses onto the man's chest. Keigo watches as the tiny boy wraps his arms around Aizawa's neck. The man himself is laying a gentle, large hand on the boy's back to make sure that he wouldn't fall. And if there's a large squeal that comes from Present Mic, that can most likely be heard across the entire city just because Izuku gave Aizawa a tiny kiss on his cheek, and it's definitely because Aizawa's been sneaking forehead kisses on Izuku and Keigo every night, thinking that they didn't know. Well, they were gone from the park before anyone can question it. They didn't want to bring attention to themselves, after all. Present Mic was a pretty big deal. But of course, if Present Mic yelled a second time because Izuku gave him the same treatment, they'll just have to have Nezu cover it up as an alarm that accidentally went off. Keigo doesn't tell either of his parental figures that he gets a special treatment of a cheek kiss and a hug every single night. They might die at the thought that they'll get the same thing every night one day too. And he can't have them dead quite yet. They're a really important part of his life now, and possibly forever. On the 3rd month, Izuku gets a tummy ache. It's nothing too big or life-threatening, but it makes Izuku especially clingy. Keigo was used to the clinginess. He'd hold on to Keigo at most times in the day. Aizawa and Yamada were slowly getting the same treatment as Keigo, though, Izuku deeming them worthy enough to climb up and cling onto around the neck or hide his face into their chests. But this clinginess was definitely more heart-wrenching. Izuku just laid on whoever was passing him on to and pouting and whining. They couldn't give the kid anything, as they didn't currently have anything, and it seems like the tummy ache was just caused by eating too much at once, so they had to wait it out. But ow. Izuku's whimpers are saddening. The hatchling has his face buried in Hizashi's chest, fist clutching at the loud man's shirt and legs tucked up a little as if trying to shield his stomach more than it already was. The boy doesn't know how to properly handle pain, and honestly no 4-year-old should. Pain sucked no matter how old you were, but at least when you're older you know that it eventually passes. Izuku, however, is very upset and very much distressed at the fact that he has a tummy ache. The baby squishes his face onto Hizashi's chest further, rubbing up and down somewhat harshly and whimpering, and the man has to gently place his hand on the opposite side of his face in order to get him to stop, and he starts rubbing circles with his thumb on the boy's cheek. Izuku squirms in response, letting out another pained whimper and huffing. Yamada gently shushes the baby, laying a large hand on a tiny back and petting through green curls. As much as it was sweet and painful to watch, Aizawa was close by with Keigo, helping the hawk to study for his classes next to the coffee table while Hizashi laid on the couch with Izuku. It was more painful watching Izuku inevitably throw up on the loud man's chest. It was also relieving, however, when Izuku, his body had stopped twitching in little fits of pain and just relaxed. Hizashi curses quietly at the wet substance on his shirt, but sighs in acceptance. Better to have to wash a shirt in order to get a stain out rather than having a baby that's in pain. Keigo snickers, and Aizawa hides a smirk, with a duck of his head, both watching as Hizashi gently lifts Izuku up with him, and he stands, basically waddles over to the bathroom to get them both cleaned up. Make sure you actually give him a bath and not just wipe him down, Aizawa calls out into the hallway, making Keigo laugh, and Hizashi squawk back saying, I know, as if he actually knew, but he was just a liar, and a bad one at that. At least next time Hizashi would know to wear an older shirt, that he didn't mind getting stains on, but then again, he'd be willing to sacrifice any shirt, just to have his babies okay. The next day finds Aizawa sitting at the kitchen table with Izuku in his lap, nomming on a cookie from the beloved cookie jar, and nodding along to what Aizawa was saying. The tired man decided to be good to get a little bit of teaching in for the 4-year-old, though nothing too hard as yesterday wasn't great for the kid. It'd just be a simple day of learning about animals and eating one sweet before dinner time, because he deserves it, of course. Keigo sits himself at the table after walking into the kitchen, placing his school notebook down and opening it up to get started on homework and keeping an eye on Izuku as he does. Hizashi wasn't quite home yet, so they had some time before they ate dinner. The hawk takes his time on math problems. He wasn't exactly in a rush, and it wasn't like he was behind in math at all. Besides, watching Izuku was more important, obviously. He was too cute. Hizashi would argue that they both were too adorable for their own goods, but come on, Izuku. He literally hops around the house when he has too much energy, like he was a literal bunny. The loud man would probably refute back and point out the way that Keigo's wings would fluff up every time that he was excited, or the chirps and the coos that he would make whenever Izuku did something that he was proud of. But he would still lose, because Izuku gave the best hugs, where he would nuzzle his cheek onto whomever he was hugging and squeak. It was just so affectionate and loving, and you were absolutely not alive after it. Izuku was the move that ended all of their moves, impossible to counter. So yes, Keigo wins. Loudman loses. Though then Aizawa would point out that Keigo's sneeze is like a baby bird's, and Hizashi would laugh in triumph, and the argument would continue on until Izuku walks in and makes grabby hands and wants to be picked up, and promptly ending the conversation just by being cute. Anyways, this was all just speculation, of course. It's not like it would actually happen or anything. It's not like it already happened 3 days ago or anything. Keigo has no idea what you're talking about. Shut up. Anyways, the point is that nothing is more important than Izuku's pure, undying baby face, including homework. Oh, and don't get Keigo started on the freckles. How can someone resist a baby face accompanied by freckles? No one can truly say no to this boy, and if they do, it's because they're possessed. There can't be another explanation. Wait, what? This family is cursed. Keigo thinks as Aizawa slowly slides a picture of Nezu in front of Izuku right after telling him about bunnies. They were apparently going through simple animals at the moment, where Aizawa would show Izuku a picture of a creature and make him guess what it is before telling him and laying a few facts down for the boy about said creature. And now Aizawa just threw shade at the principal, which means that Keigo could have blackmail. However, the conversation doesn't go how he thinks it's going to. "What's this, Izuku?" Aizawa questions, and Izuku squints down at Nezu before looking back at his parental figure with his tongue sticking out. The kid does his best to sign who, as he was working really hard to learn sign language. Izuku seemed to really like the idea of talking, but at the same time, not really. The kid still didn't use it most of the time, but it helped with basics like asking for something or studying as they're doing it now. Otherwise, the kid just resorted to nods and pointing. "Who, not what," Izuku signs, then pauses. "Nezu." He does his best to fingerspell, biting his lip in thought. "Not animal. Living, yes. Treat like human." Aizawa nods along with Izuku's words, ruffling the kid's hair with a satisfied smile. "You got it, kid. He looks different, but that doesn't make him any less worthy." Izuku visibly brightens and nods, looking over to Keigo with a cheery smile. And so it was a lesson on morals. He had a good dad. Wait, shit. Keigo promptly freezes in place, earning a confused look from Izuku and a concerned gaze from Aizawa, though very conveniently Keigo sneezes and he's able to play it off as, "Oh, it was just a sneeze making me tense up, not the thought of calling you dad or anything like that." Oh god, he couldn't have a crisis right now. He has homework to do. Save the crisis for nighttime when he's in bed. Later, when they're eating dinner together, Keigo can't contain the breakdown and promptly cries into his food out of the blue. Hizashi and Shouta are both startled, and immediately Izuku is off of Aizawa's lap and crawling up into Keigo's instead. The hatchling nuzzles his face against Keigo's chest as he cries. Later into the night, Keigo can't bring himself to quite explain yet why he had broken down, not wanting to explain that he's never had any parental figures that he could truly call dad until now. It was always handler and sir. But he's happy to be here, and not there. He's so glad. So glad. His dads would get their answer in another day, and Keigo would explain that he's not 100% ready to call them dad outright, but he does think of them as his fathers. Hizashi would have to resist crying as he and Aizawa accept Keigo's choice. He deserved to take his time and make his own choices. This, Keigo was grateful for. Acceptance. He goes to bed feeling lighter, though also heavier, but that's just because Izuku was glued to his chest. It's all right. Hizashi and Aizawa made good for glue removers that'll help in the morning. On month 4, Aizawa's the one to claim that he adopted cryptids. Hizashi just squints as if he didn't hear what just came out of his husband's mouth. "This whole family is cryptid. What makes you say that this time?" Hizashi questions as Shouta gestures over to the couch. Hizashi walks over quietly, glancing down at the couch and blinking. There, sitting on the couch, was Izuku and Keigo, both playing on the Switch, most likely Animal Crossing or Zelda, if the noises were anything to go by. As much as that would be normal, the fact that both cats were sitting on their heads as if it was a normal thing to do was not the only thing that stuck out. No, it wasn't the cats on their heads. It was also the upside-down switches and the mismatched clothing. Were his kids okay? Why was this a good idea in their heads? Keigo catches Hizashi's eyes and nudges Izuku, both kids promptly sticking out their tongues at the loud man and making his mouth gape. They were in sync. Izuku lets out a giggle right as Keigo snorts, both of them putting down their switches and taking the cats off of their heads. The cats let out meows in protest, but otherwise do not struggle. "Oh, so you think making your parents question their sanity is funny, huh?" Hizashi questions, fake pouting when they just nod. Heartbreaking. Utterly heartbreaking. "Love you too, Hizashi." Keigo snickers out, but now Hizashi is just fucking dead because my son loves me. He watches Keigo freeze in place in realization, Izuku remaining oblivious, however Hizashi is not. The man is quick to take a large step over and hug Keigo tightly in his arms. "Love you, baby bird," he says quietly, and Keigo sags in relief in the man's arms. Izuku, feeling left out, stands on the couch and does his classic collapse on the family and then hug them. His small body collides with his dad's and Keigo's, tiny arms trying their best to form a hug around them both. Keigo and Hizashi laugh, bringing the boy in between them and earning a pleased noise from the boy. They don't question the extra pair of arms that comes from a tired man that wrapped around them as well. It's just natural, after all. The holidays during their first year at the Yamazawa household is utterly normal, honestly. It's so domestic and heartwarming. Halloween, Christmas, Easter, all of it. It's so much fun despite Izuku and Keigo not really knowing how to approach them. Keigo never properly celebrated holidays. Sure, he got some rare gifts from his handlers back then, but obviously otherwise it was never a family thing, and Izuku was just sad at first. He only had 3-ish years of holidays, and they had been spent with his parents that are now dead, the same parents that had abandoned him. So yeah, both kids were quite reluctant to trust the holidays at first. Good thing for them, however, they were never pressured into doing anything that they didn't want to, and Hizashi was pretty big of a distraction from their own emotions anyways. So the holidays were fun, with just the 4, 6, including the cats, at home and having family time. Izuku wasn't quite ready to spend it with other people other than his family, so they usually saved more crowded events until after the holiday was over. That way Izuku could have fun with a private holiday with his family first. Then another day he could sleep in Aizawa's arms at events with friends as the introverted man stays in a corner and watches his extroverts from afar. Sometimes he'd get approached and have some small talk, but otherwise Izuku doesn't get overwhelmed and Aizawa gets his well-deserved space. He sees all his friends often, anyways. Whenever he works, he doesn't need to talk as if they haven't seen each other in years. That was Hizashi's job, and Kigo's job, apparently. At least, the boy wasn't terrified of strangers. That was a good thing. He was lucky. Izuku, however... Okay, don't think about that. Think about the positive sides and how much they've both been improving. He was super proud of him. So no, holidays have not been an issue so far. The only real issue at first was knowing what gifts to get the kids. They always got the basics, of course, clothes and toys. The Switches were a good idea, thank you, Hizashi, because that opened up getting them video games, too. But what were they interested in? They got pretty basic answers at first. During the first month, Hizashi made small talk with the kiddos, asking what they liked and disliked. I like chicken. I don't like mushy things. Kigo frowns, looking down at Izuku, who's staring up at him in his lap. I just really like food, I guess. It was always nice trying something new yeah, I also like birds, but I think that's pretty obvious. Maybe not, I don't know. Do you have a favorite color? Hizashi questions, giving Aizawa a small look. The man just squeezes Hizashi's own hand in his own, sending a small look back of understanding. Kigo glances at Izuku's hair, not so subtly, and grins. Green. They're not surprised when Izuku's favorite color in return is red. I mean, honestly, what else did they expect? When asking Izuku what he liked, the boy just opened his own current favorite storybook that Hizashi was reading to him at night and points at the bunny. Izuku didn't know the fate that he put upon himself because he now owns several bunny stuffed animals and several bunny-themed clothing articles. This includes 4 pairs of bunny onesies. At least the kid was really happy about it. Later on, however, they find out that Izuku really, really likes heroes. Hizashi and Aizawa walked in from their room into the living room, meeting the sight of Kigo smiling fondly at Izuku, who's jumping up and down rapidly on the couch in one of his bunny onesies, this one being red, of course, and pointing rapidly at the TV in front of him. There was an All Might cartoon on at the moment, and the intro song was currently playing as the show began. As soon as the hatchling spotted his parents watching, he was pointing with both fingers at the screen with the most amazed look on his face. Well, it looks like they know what Izuku's room will be themed as soon as he's brave enough to stay in it. Aizawa somewhat dreads All Might's future smile, staring him down every time he walks into his son's room. However, seeing Izuku's own smile that was clearly brighter than All Might's would be worth it. Keigo was still a bit of an unknown case, but Aizawa and Hizashi find that the kid is very content with the basics. He every so often will ask for a poster of a video game or a certain hero that's never All Might, though Aizawa thinks that's more for Izuku more than himself. Every hero poster or hero merch that he gets, he explains what the hero is like to Izuku. After most likely doing research, Keigo wasn't too into watching the heroes on TV as much as Izuku was, and unironically Izuku is waving his hands rapidly the next day in excitement as he points to the hero on the TV screen. These kids. God. And after Keigo had shown Izuku that there was Present Mike merch, let's just say that Present Mike was crying at the fact that they asked to buy some of it and Aizawa was fondly rolling his eyes. Luckily, there was no Eraserhead merch. Not so luckily, Mike commissioned a poster of Eraserhead from a close friend. And he couldn't say a word because Izuku and Keigo seemed so genuinely happy about it. He was weak. They had to slow down on buying hero merch near the end of the year. They had to have something to give their kids next year after all, but at least they were content with what they have. Izuku has also gotten really into writing, mostly notes about heroes. Most of the notes weren't totally readable, but they honestly were decent for a 4-year-old. Anyways, they bought the kid a bunch of notebooks as well. He was really excited about that. And Aizawa just realized that Izuku was most likely going to have hero-themed school supplies. Crap. Maybe he can convince the kid to go with bunnies. He doesn't think it'd be a good idea if the kid showed up with something with his own face on it. Lucky for future Aizawa, Izuku's very weak for bunnies and practically squealed when he got a bunny backpack accompanied by a bunny hoodie. What an accomplishment. At the end of the first year, when Izuku is 5 and Keigo is 12, things are good, which is why Aizawa was nervous to send Izuku to school for the first time. He didn't have much of a choice, but that doesn't mean that he can stop being an overly worried father for his anxious kid. Hizashi was in the same mindset, listing off things in his head that could go wrong and how to fix it if it does. Out of all the outcomes they were expecting, this was definitely not it. Izuku made a friend. That's what he told them when he came home for the first time, still overly anxious and tired from the first day, but actually happy. Hizashi's quick to ask about his friend, and suddenly their relief turns to, oh shit. He's purple, and he has a brainwash quirk, and he doesn't care that I'm quirkless. The boy signs, hands shaking from his own anxiety and excitement. Izu. Aizawa frowns, and Izuku's expression quickly changes to confusion. Did I do something wrong? No, little baby, you didn't, Hizashi says reassuringly and picks up his son, cradling him in his arms. Then what's wrong? Izuku questions, still frowning. Izu, you're not quirkless, hon. Hizashi answers, and Izuku's mouth gapes. Huh? Izuku squeaks out. That... what? They have some explaining to do. Shit. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 4 of Fallen Baby Birds. Chapter 5 will be next. I hope y'all are enjoying this one so far. Let me know your thoughts and reactions below, and as always, thank you so much for listening.